My father's new wife told 22 dinner guests that I was a lazy freeloader who needed a receptionist job. Her daughter pulled out a corporate credit card to pay the $4,847 bill, not knowing the company on that card was mine. When the waiter came back with a frozen card and a very uncomfortable expression, I opened a blue binder and ended 3 lives in under 6 minutes. Before I reveal what was in that binder, let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever stayed quiet while someone underestimated everything about you, because this story is for you. My name is Camille and I'm 31 years old. On the Sunday, it all began to unravel. I was sitting at my father's kitchen table in a ranch house outside Charlotte, North Carolina, doing what I always did, working on my laptop. The laptop itself was old. A MacBook with a crack along the bottom edge and a faded lavender sticker my mother had pressed into the corner 6 years ago, back when she was healthy enough to find that kind of thing funny. She'd said it made the computer look less corporate. I never peeled it off. Even now, with the adhesive curling at the edges, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. On that screen was the Q3 revenue dashboard for Ridgeline Analytics, the data intelligence company I'd founded 18 months earlier out of my apartment. Market valuation as of that Friday, $80.4 million. 47 employees across 3 time zones, all remote, all reporting through my COO, Marcus Webb. My name didn't appear on the website. It didn't appear on the company's LinkedIn. On paper, the CEO was listed under my legal middle and maiden name, a decision I'd made early on for privacy, and one that turned out to be the most important choice of my life. But at that kitchen table, none of that existed. At that kitchen table, I was just Gerald Porter's unemployed daughter who spent too much time staring at a screen. The house still smelled like my mother's lemon cleaning spray when I first started visiting after her death 2 years ago. Now it smelled like Denise's candles, thick vanilla and sandalwood, the kind that cost $40 and gave me a headache. Denise Calloway was 44, blonde highlighted, and had married my father exactly 3 months after their first date. She moved in with her 26-year-old daughter Brooke 2 weeks after the wedding. Within a month, every trace of my mother had been erased from the main floor. The family photos on the hallway wall replaced with portraits of Denise and my father at wineries. My old bedroom, now Brooke's room, complete with a vanity mirror ringed in Hollywood lights and a closet full of designer bags. The front door lock changed. No one gave me a key. I rang the doorbell at my own father's house every Sunday like a stranger. And my father let all of it happen. He was sitting across from me that morning, sipping coffee from a new mug Denise had bought him, matte black. No handle, the kind that looks good on Instagram but burns your fingers. He was 58, recently retired from a mid-level management job at a logistics company, and desperately performing the role of a man 20 years younger. New polo shirts Denise picked out. New haircut. New opinions on wine. He kept glancing at my laptop with that look, the one that said he was embarrassed by my existence, but didn't want to start a fight, before Denise came downstairs. Denise came downstairs. She walked into the kitchen in a silk robe and full makeup at 9 in the morning, surveyed the room, and let out a dramatic sigh when she saw me. "Oh, you're here." She poured herself coffee, leaned against the counter, and watched me type for a moment. "You know," she said, stirring cream with a tiny silver spoon, "I found the most wonderful program at the community college. Medical billing certification. 6 weeks, very affordable." She looked at my father. "Wouldn't that be perfect for Camille? Give her something to put on a resume?" My father nodded. "That's actually a great idea, Denise." I didn't look up. On my screen, I was approving a $3.2 million acquisition of a competing analytics firm in Denver. My fingers moved across the keyboard, calm and precise. "I'll look into it," I said. "You always say that." Denise took a long sip. "Sweetheart, some people are just born to watch from the sidelines. There's no shame in it. But at some point you have to ask yourself, is this really the life your mother would have wanted for you?" My jaw tightened, but I kept my hands on the keys. The front door opened with a bang. Brooke swept in carrying a shopping bag from Nordstrom, wearing oversized sunglasses indoors, and a cream cashmere sweater that cost more than most people's car payments. She'd driven here in a BMW 3 Series she bought 2 months ago, paid in full cash from a source I knew intimately, and she didn't. She dropped the bag on the counter, glanced at me, and let out a laugh. Still on that laptop, God Camille at least get a desk job. Even Starbucks is hiring. She turned to Denise. Mom, did you see the new Tory Burch collection I ordered 3 pieces last night? That's my girl. Denise beamed. See, Gerald Brooke knows how to go out and get what she wants. My father smiled the way he always smiled at Brooke, warm, impressed, proud. The smile he used to give me when I brought home straight A's before Denise taught him that achievement was measured in handbags. I closed my laptop slowly. I looked at Brooke's BMW key fob sitting on the counter next to my mother's old recipe tin that nobody used anymore. I looked at my father, who was looking at Denise, who was looking at Brooke, who was looking at her own reflection in the microwave door. You're right, I said quietly, standing up. I should probably pay more attention to where the money goes. Nobody heard the warning. Nobody ever does. That night in my apartment across town, I opened the secure drive on my desktop and pulled up the file labeled Brooke Calloway Discrepancies. 3 months of falsified invoices, $47,312 in unauthorized transfers, and one corporate credit card she had no idea I could shut down with a single phone call. The worst part wasn't that Denise was redecorating my dead mother's house. It was that my father helped her carry the boxes to the curb. I found out on a Tuesday. Marcus sent me a photo from Brooke's Instagram story, a boomerang of cardboard boxes stacked on the curb outside my father's house, with the caption "out," with the old, followed by a sparkling emoji. I zoomed in. The handwriting on the side of the top box said, Karen's Things Garage. Karen. My mother's name. Written in my father's handwriting. I sat in my apartment staring at that photo for 11 minutes. Then I closed Instagram, opened Slack, and went back to work. That's what I did. That's what I always did. 3 weeks after the Sunday morning kitchen incident, Denise invited her friend Barbara over for Friday dinner. Barbara was 52, loud, and collected opinions about other people's children, the way some women collect porcelain figurines obsessively and without permission. The dining table was set with new charcoal placemats Denise had ordered from Pottery Barn. Dinner was chicken marsala that Denise claimed she'd spent all afternoon preparing, but I'd seen the takeout container from Carrabba's in the recycling bin on my way in. Nobody else checked the recycling. Nobody else paid attention. Brooke arrived late still in a silk blouse from work dangling a new Gucci crossbody like a trophy. She kissed Gerald on the cheek she'd started calling him Dad 3 weeks into knowing him and dropped into the chair next to Denise. Sorry I'm late. Crazy day at the office. 6-figure accounts don't manage themselves. Denise glowed. Barbara, did I tell you Brooke just got a raise at her company, a very successful tech firm right here in Charlotte? She handles major accounts. The very successful tech firm was Ridgeline Analytics, my company. The 6-figure accounts Brooke handled were accounts I had built from nothing. The raise she'd received was one I had approved through HR without Brooke ever knowing the authorization came from me. Barbara turned her wide, appraising eyes on me. And Camille, what exactly do you do, sweetheart? 3 seconds of silence. I opened my mouth. Denise got there first. Oh, Camille is still figuring things out. She works from home, on her laptop. She said laptop the way someone might say Ouija board, like it was a suspicious hobby for an unserious person. Barbara nodded with that specific brand of pity that women over 50 have perfected, the tight smile, the slight head tilt. Well, there's no shame in taking your time, honey. My nephew didn't find his calling until he was 35. He sells insurance now. Does very well. Brooke snorted into her wine glass. Gerald stared at his chicken. After Barbara left, I was rinsing dishes. Denise never rinsed dishes when my father appeared at the kitchen doorway. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, wearing the expression of a man about to deliver a speech he'd rehearsed in the shower. "Camille, we need to talk." I turned off the faucet. Waited. "Denise is trying to build something here," he said. "A real family. And I need you to meet her halfway. Get dressed when you come over. Leave the house once in a while. I can't keep defending you when her friends ask what my daughter does for a living." The water dripped from my fingers into the stainless steel sink. "What do you tell them?" He didn't answer for 4 seconds. I counted. "I tell them you're between opportunities." Between opportunities. I ran a company that employed 47 people and cleared $14 million in revenue last quarter, and my father told his wife's friends I was between opportunities. "Okay, Dad," I said. I dried my hands on a towel that used to be my mother's. Denise hadn't replaced the kitchen towels yet, probably because they weren't visible enough to matter. "I'll try harder." He left, satisfied, completely unaware of how much that phrase cost me. At 11 p.m., alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop. The lavender sticker caught the blue light of the screen. An encrypted email from Marcus sat at the top of my inbox. "Camille." Another anomaly flagged. Brooke approved a $12,400 vendor payment to a company called Vertex Supply Group. Vertex doesn't exist. Same shell pattern as last month's fake invoices registered to a P.O. box in Wilmington, D.E. Total unauthorized transfers now at $47,312. I scrolled down. Also, security flagged an after-hours data export Tuesday night. Brooke downloaded the complete Q3 client database and emailed it to a personal Gmail address. Attachment was 4.2 gigabytes. "Want me to lock her out?" I stared at the email. The numbers glowed against the dark screen. $47,312. Stolen from me by a woman who lived in my dead mother's bedroom and called my father Dad. I looked at the lavender sticker. I typed 3 words back to Marcus: "Not yet. Track everything." Then my father knocked on my apartment door. He'd driven across town at 11 at night not to apologize, not to check on me. He was holding a glossy brochure. "Denise found this for you," he said, handing it through the doorway. "Receptionist position at her friend's dental office. $16 an hour. It's a start, Camille." I took the brochure, looked at the stock photo of a smiling woman in scrubs answering a phone, looked at my father standing in the hallway in his new polo shirt, genuinely believing he was helping. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt something worse. I felt sorry for him. "Thanks, Dad. I'll think about it." He patted my shoulder, the most physical affection he'd shown me in months, and walked away. I closed the door, dropped the brochure in the recycling bin, and went back to my laptop. The next morning, Marcus sent me a second email. This one wasn't about Brooke. It was about Denise. Her name had just appeared on a title search. Someone had contacted a real estate attorney about adding a new name to the deed of my father's house. I could handle being called lazy. I could handle the brochures and the pity looks. But when I found out Denise was trying to steal my dead mother's house, something inside me went completely still. The title search Marcus forwarded was dated 4 days earlier. A real estate attorney named Paul Kimball in Gastonia had been contacted to draft a quitclaim deed adding Denise Calloway as co-owner of 4817 Magnolia Lane, my father's house. My mother's house. The house she'd painted sage green the summer I turned 7. The house where she planted rose bushes along the front walkway when she was 6 months pregnant with me. The deed hadn't been signed yet. Gerald's signature line was still blank. But the document was drafted, printed, and ready. All Denise needed was a pen and my father's blind trust. I kept digging. Marcus had set up monitoring alerts on Denise's name after the title search flagged, and within 48 hours, the picture got uglier. Denise had opened a credit card under Gerald's name, a Chase Sapphire with a $15,000 limit. Current balance, $11,400. The charges read like a lifestyle catalog: Neiman Marcus SoulCycle membership, a $200 weekend at the Umstead Hotel and Spa in Cary. My father's credit score was being demolished in real time, and he had no idea the card existed. But the credit card wasn't the worst of it. Buried in a chain of emails Brooke had accidentally forwarded to the wrong internal address, a mistake so stupid it almost felt like fate was a thread between Denise and a man named Craig Mercer. The messages were intimate, explicit in places, and devastatingly clear. Miss you already. Next month can't come soon enough. And the line that turned my blood cold: Gerald doesn't suspect a thing. He's so grateful to have a wife again he'd believe anything I told him. Attached to one of Craig's replies was a booking confirmation. 2 one-way tickets to Hilton Head for the last weekend of October. The same weekend Denise had told my father she was going on a spa retreat with girlfriends. One way, not round trip. She wasn't planning a vacation. She was planning an exit. I saved everything. Screenshots to a cloud folder. Copies emailed to myself. Originals downloaded to a USB drive I kept in the fireproof lockbox under my bed, the one I'd bought at Home Depot for $89 3 months ago, back when Brooke's fake invoices were the only problem. The next morning, I called Aunt Patricia. Patricia Wynne was my mother's younger sister, 60 years old, silver-haired and built from the kind of southern steel that smiles politely right before it cuts you in half. She'd driven up from Savannah for my mother's funeral and stayed a week to make sure Gerald ate. She was the only person in the family who knew about Ridgeline. I'd told her 6 months ago over peach cobbler at her kitchen table, and she'd set down her fork and said, "Your mama always knew you'd blow the doors off something." We met at a coffee shop on East Boulevard. I laid it all out. Brooke's embezzlement, the fake invoices, the data theft. Denise's credit card fraud, the quitclaim deed, Craig Mercer, the one-way tickets. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set her coffee cup down on the saucer with a precise little click. "Your mother spent 30 years in that house," she said. "She planted those rose bushes out front when she could barely bend over from carrying you. That woman is not getting her name on that deed." She looked at me with eyes that were so much like my mother's it physically hurt. "What are you going to do?" "Everything." Patricia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Good. Your mama raised a fighter. She just didn't live long enough to see it. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you the most, hit subscribe. Because what happened next changed everything." That evening, I sat at my desk in my apartment, the desk where I'd built Ridgeline from nothing, where I'd signed my first client contract at 2 in the morning with cold coffee and shaking hands, and I typed an email to Marcus. "Initiate full forensic audit on Brooke Calloway's accounts. Pull every transaction from the last 4 months. And Marcus find out if she's the one who leaked the Whitfield client data to Pinnacle Solutions in August. I want the paper trail by Friday." I hit send. Close the laptop. The lavender sticker caught the light from my desk lamp, pale purple against brushed aluminum. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the familiar sting behind my eyes when I looked at it. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the quiet of my apartment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on Independence Boulevard, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt ready. 3 days later, Marcus called me at 6 a.m. His voice was tight. "Camille, it's worse than we thought. Brooke didn't just steal money. She sold our entire client database to Pinnacle Solutions for $35,000. And the buyer, he's the man she's been telling everyone is her rich fiancé." Brooke's so-called wealthy fiancé wasn't a tech investor. He was the CEO of our biggest competitor. And Brooke had been feeding him our data for months, pillow talk dressed up as corporate espionage. Marcus laid it out on a video call that morning, his face lit by 3 monitors in his home office in Raleigh. He'd spent the weekend pulling threads, and what he found was worse than a simple data sale. Derek Hale, 34, Vice President of Business Development at Pinnacle Solutions, the firm that had been undercutting our bids on every major contract since August. Not a tech billionaire. Not an investor. A mid-level executive earning $120,000 a year who drove a leased Audi and lived in a two-bedroom condo off South Boulevard. She met him at a networking event in July, Marcus said, scrolling through a timeline he'd built on a shared screen. First data export happened August 9th, 3 weeks later. She's been sending client lists, pricing models, and proprietary algorithms to his personal email every 2 weeks since. Payment came in a single lump sum, $35,000, wired to a Venmo account she opened under a slightly misspelled version of her name. Brooke Calloway, I said. 1L. 1L. Marcus shook his head. She thought dropping a letter would make it untraceable. That's not how wire transfers work. I almost laughed. Almost. There's more, he said. The pregnancy. He pulled up Brooke's Instagram. 3 days ago, she'd posted a photo of a sonogram, black and white, grainy, the little bean-shaped blur circled in pink marker with the caption, "Our little secret isn't so little anymore." 247 likes, heart emojis from Taylor and Madison. A comment from Denise, "Grandma is ready." Marcus placed a second image next to it. Same sonogram, pixel for pixel identical. He'd found it on a stock medical photography website uploaded 18 months ago by a clinic in Tampa. The metadata on Brooke's version showed it had been downloaded to her phone on October 2nd at 11:14 p.m. "There is no baby," I said. "There is no baby," Marcus confirmed. "She's using the pregnancy to accelerate the engagement. Derek posted a ring photo last week. The guy thinks he's about to be a father." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The scale of it was almost impressive. The lying, the layering, the sheer audacity of building a fake life and expecting it to hold. Brooke was stealing from my company, selling secrets to my competitor, faking a pregnancy to trap a man who didn't know he was being played, and spending the profits on Gucci bags she wore to my father's dinner table while calling me a freeloader. And she did all of it from a desk in my company using a login I had authorized. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. "My father is planning a dinner," I said. "Next Saturday, the Capitol Grill. He's inviting friends, Denise's friends, Brooke's friends, the whole performance. The purpose is to formally introduce Derek as Brooke's fiancé." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then his mouth twitched. "You're going to let them set the stage themselves. They're going to fill the room with witnesses. I just need to bring the evidence." "That's cold, Camille. That's efficient." He nodded slowly, the way he always did when a plan was settling into place behind his eyes. Marcus had been my first hire, an Army logistics veteran who treated data the way he'd once treated supply chains, with ruthless precision and zero sentimentality. He was the only person on Earth who knew I was the CEO of Ridgeline Analytics, and also the stepdaughter of Denise Calloway. He never judged the gap between those two identities. He just helped me manage both. That afternoon, I called Aunt Patricia to update her. "Lord have mercy," she said when I told her about the fake sonogram. "That girl changes boyfriends like I change my oil filter every 3 months, whether she needs to or not." I laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd had in weeks, the kind that loosens something in your chest. "You go to that dinner, baby," Patricia said, her voice shifting from humor to steel in one breath. "And you wear something nice. Your mother always said the best revenge is a good outfit and a better lawyer." 2 days later, Gerald called me. "Camille." His voice was bright, the voice he used when he wanted something to go smoothly. "Saturday night. The Capitol Grill on South Tryon, 7 o'clock. Brooke has wonderful news. She's getting married to a very successful man. This is a big moment for our family." He paused. "Please don't embarrass me." I held the phone against my ear and looked out my apartment window at the Charlotte skyline, the autumn sun catching the glass towers downtown. I wouldn't dream of it, Dad. I'll be there. The morning after my father's call, I dialed Detective Rowan at the Charlotte Mecklenburg White Collar Crime Unit. I gave him everything: the falsified invoices, the offshore vendor shells, the stolen database, the $35,000 wire transfer. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Ms. Porter, how soon do you need us to move on this?" I told him the exact date of the dinner. Detective Rowan told me the Financial Crimes Unit needed 72 hours to process the warrant. The dinner was in 5 days. I had just enough time to make sure every domino was perfectly aligned. The plan was simple in structure and devastating in execution. Marcus would keep Brooke's system access fully operational, her login, her email, her corporate card all functioning normally, so she wouldn't suspect a thing. At the dinner, when Brooke swiped the corporate card to pay the bill, I would send Marcus a one-word text. He'd trigger the account freeze remotely. The bank would lock the card mid-transaction on authorization from the fraud investigation, and then I would stand up and explain exactly why. "You want to let her keep using the card until the dinner?" Marcus asked on our Wednesday morning call. "I want her to feel invincible when she swipes it. The fall hits harder from higher up." Marcus was quiet for 2 seconds. "Copy that." Wednesday afternoon, I ran one final sweep of Denise's trail. What I found made the credit card fraud look like a parking ticket. She'd booked 2 one-way plane tickets to Costa Rica, departing November 1st, 3 weeks after the dinner. Carrier was American Airlines out of Charlotte Douglas. The booking was under 2 names, Denise Calloway and Craig Mercer. One way, no return. No hotel reservation either, which meant either Craig had property there, or Denise planned to figure it out with whatever cash she could extract before disappearing. The puzzle clicked into place. The quitclaim deed, the credit card under Gerald's name, the affair. Costa Rica. She wasn't nesting, she was building an escape hatch. Get her name on the house, borrow against the equity drain Gerald's credit, and vanish to Central America with her boyfriend, while my father sat alone in a house with a second mortgage he didn't know existed. I saved the booking confirmation screenshot cloud USB email to myself. The fireproof lockbox under my bed was getting heavy. Thursday, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went shopping. The store was a small boutique on Selwyn Avenue, not flashy, not designer, just clean lines and good fabric. I tried on a navy-tailored blazer that fit like it was made for me. Black trousers. Simple heels, not high enough to be a statement, just high enough to feel armored. The saleswoman watched me study myself in the 3-panel mirror. "Special occasion?" she asked. I looked at my reflection the first time I'd really looked in weeks. My mother's jaw, my father's eyes, my own spine straight and still. Something like that. I paid cash. Hung the blazer on the back of my desk chair when I got home, right next to the blue binder. The binder was the centerpiece. I'd spent Thursday evening assembling it with the precision Marcus had taught me: color-coded tabs, documents in chronological order, each section separated by clear dividers. Red tab: Brooks' falsified invoices highlighted line by line totaling $47,312. Orange tab: the Pinnacle Solutions data sale, Brooks' Venmo records. Derek Hale's email confirmations, the $35,000 wire transfer receipt. Yellow tab: the fake sonogram side by side with the stock photo, original metadata printout, showing download date and source URL. Green tab: Denise's affair email thread, with Craig Mercer, the Costa Rica booking, GPS-tagged photos from Denise's Instagram, showing her at a restaurant in Hilton Head the same weekend she told Gerald she was at a spa retreat. Blue tab: financial fraud, the forged Chase Sapphire application, the $11,400 in charges, Gerald's credit report showing the unauthorized account. Purple tab: the quitclaim deed draft from Paul Kimball's office, unsigned but ready. 6 tabs, 6 betrayals, 1 binder. Friday morning, Detective Rowan called. "Warrants approved," he said. His voice was steady, professional. the voice of a man who did this regularly and still took it seriously. "We'll coordinate with the bank to freeze the corporate accounts at your signal. My team will be on standby within 2 blocks of the restaurant. Text the word and we move." "You'll know when," I said. "Ms. Porter." He paused. "Be careful in there." "Detective, they've spent 6 months calling me a freeloader. They have no idea what's coming." If you've ever watched someone dig their own grave and waited for the perfect moment, you know exactly how this feels. Stay with me. Saturday evening, 6:47 p.m. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror in the navy blazer I'd bought 3 days ago. My mother's laptop sat open on the bed behind me, the Ridgeline dashboard still glowing on the screen. 31 active users, 2 pending contracts, 1 CEO, about to walk into a war zone. I picked up my phone and texted Marcus 2 words: "We're live." Then I grabbed the blue binder, slipped it into my bag, and walked out the door. The Capitol Grill on South Tryon Street was packed with Charlotte's finest on a Saturday night. 22 people were seated at the long private table my father had reserved, and every single one of them was about to watch his world collapse. I arrived at 7:08. Deliberately late. I wanted them settled, comfortable, already, 2 sips into their wine and fully committed to the performance. The hostess led me down a corridor lined with dark wood panels and brass sconces. The private dining room was at the back, heavy double doors already propped open, the warm hum of conversation and clinking glasses spilling into the hallway. I paused at the threshold. The table stretched the length of the room, white linen, polished silverware tea candles in small glass holders, casting soft amber light across 22 faces. My father sat at the head in a new charcoal sport coat, his arm draped across the back of Denise's chair with the casual possessiveness of a man who believed he'd won the lottery. Denise was in emerald green statement earrings, fresh blowout the full production. She looked like a woman who had practiced this exact smile in the mirror before leaving the house. Brooke sat dead center of the table like a bride at her own reception. Red dress, low neckline, the diamond ring catching every candle in the room. Derek Hale sat beside her in a gray vest and white shirt sleeves rolled to the forearms, handsome in a careful, rehearsed way, like a man who'd been told where to sit and what to order. On Brooke's other side, Taylor and Madison were already flushed from rosé, giggling at something on Taylor's phone. The remaining seats held 3 couples, Gerald and Denise's friends from the neighborhood, all in their 50s, the kind of people who played mixed doubles on Saturdays and discussed property values at dinner parties. Barbara was there naturally in a leopard print blouse, and 2 of Denise's co-workers from the real estate office, younger women who kept touching their hair and scanning the wine list. I spotted my seat. End of the table. Between the wall and an empty chair that nobody had bothered to remove, the farthest point from the center of attention. Denise saw me first. Her eyes traveled from my face to my blazer to my simple black bag, the bag that contained the blue binder, my phone, and every secret her daughter had been stupid enough to leave on a company server. "Oh," Denise said, her voice carrying just enough volume for the nearest 6 guests to hear. "She came." She turned to Gerald and patted his arm. "Gerald, Camille's here." My father looked up. He smiled not at me, but at the table performing the role of gracious patriarch. "Camille, glad you could make it. Sit down, sweetheart." I sat. The empty chair beside me stayed empty. Nobody moved to fill it. The waiter brought me a water glass. I placed my bag on the floor between my feet, the zipper facing up. My phone sat face down on the table, silent. Marcus was 1 text away. Within 10 minutes, the show began. Brooke stood up, tapping her butter knife against a wine glass until the table quieted. She placed her hand on Derek's shoulder and beamed at the room. "I know, Dad. I mean Gerald." She giggled, and Denise mouthed, so sweet to Barbara, "Brought us all together tonight for a reason, so I might as well share the news." She lifted her left hand. The diamond caught a tea candle and threw a shard of light across the ceiling. Derek and I are getting married." The table erupted. Barbara clapped. The neighborhood couples raised their glasses. Taylor actually screamed. Madison grabbed Brooke's hand to inspect the ring. Gerald stood and shook Derek's hand with both of his, pulling him into a half-hug reserved for sons he wished he'd had. And that's not all. Brooke continued, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. She looked at Derek, placed her hand on her stomach, and whispered just loud enough for 22 people to hear, "We're expecting." The room detonated. Denise burst into tears, beautiful camera-ready tears. Gerald sat down hard, pressing his hand to his chest like a man receiving the best news of his life. Barbara fanned herself with a napkin. One of the neighborhood wives said, "Oh, honey," and reached across the table to squeeze Brooke's arm. Derek smiled, but his jaw was tight. His hand gripped his water glass a fraction too hard. I noticed. Nobody else did. Through it all, not a single person looked at me. I was wallpaper. I was the empty chair nobody removed. 30 minutes into the main course, Barbara turned her wide smile toward the end of the table. "Camille, we barely heard from you tonight. What are you up to these days, honey?" Before I could answer, Denise leaned forward. "Camille works from home, on her laptop." The same line, the same inflection. She'd rehearsed this dismissal so many times it had become a reflex. Brooke didn't even look up from her fillet. "We can talk about Camille's hobby later. Mom, did I tell you Derek's taking me to Turks and Caicos for the honeymoon?" Madison laughed. "Girl, you're literally the main character." Gerald caught my eye from the head of the table. For 1/2 second, I thought I saw something, guilt maybe, or discomfort. Then Denise whispered something in his ear and he turned away. "See, Camille," he said, not looking at me. "That's what initiative looks like." I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, set it down. 22 people, a $62 filet mignon on every plate, and a corporate credit card in Brooke's clutch that she planned to swipe in approximately 40 minutes. I could wait. The appetizers arrived. The wine flowed. And for the next 40 minutes, I sat at the end of that table and absorbed every insult, every pitying glance, every condescending laugh, memorizing each one because every single person in that room was about to find out exactly who was paying for their $62 filet mignon. Halfway through the main course, Denise decided the public humiliation wasn't enough. She wanted to make it personal. It started with the house. Barbara, 3 glasses of Chardonnay deep and completely devoid of social awareness, complimented the photos Denise had been showing on her phone. "Your home is gorgeous, Denise. That kitchen remodel is stunning." "Thank you," Denise said, tilting the screen so the nearest guests could see. "We gutted the whole thing. New countertops, new backsplash, new fixtures. The previous decor was so..." She waved her hand. "Dated." Gerald nodded along. "I mean, bless her heart." Denise continued, lowering her voice to that specific Southern register that sounds like sympathy, but cuts like a scalpel. "But Gerald's late wife decorated like she was still living in 1998. We even had to clear out boxes of her old things from the garage last week. I told Gerald it's time to move forward." The word "clear out" traveled the length of the table and landed in my chest, like a stone dropped into still water. Those boxes. My mother's things. The quilt she was sewing when the diagnosis came. The recipe cards in her handwriting, the cursive that leaned slightly to the right because she was left-handed, but her mother had forced her to write with her right. The paperback copy of East of Eden she'd been reading in the hospital, dog-eared at page 214. Cleared out. Like expired groceries, like clutter from a life that didn't matter anymore. My hand tightened around my water glass under the table, but my face didn't change. Not a flicker. One of Gerald's friends, Frank, 62, a retired bank manager who still wore a tie to casual dinners, shifted uncomfortably. He'd known my mother. He'd been at her funeral. He looked at his plate and said nothing. Nobody said anything. That was the worst part. 22 people heard Denise dismiss my dead mother's life as an inconvenience, and not a single one of them flinched. Dinner continued. The wine kept flowing. The conversation drifted to Brooke's wedding plans, venues, dress designers, guest lists. Denise was in full production mode, narrating the future as though it were already a reality. I'm thinking a spring ceremony at the Duke Mansion, intimate but elegant, 200 guests. 200! Taylor gasped. That's going to be incredible. Brooke smiled and squeezed Derek's arm. Only the best for my future husband. Derek nodded. He'd been quiet most of the evening, polite but measured, contributing monosyllables when addressed. I'd been watching him. He laughed when the table laughed, but his eyes didn't follow. He checked his phone twice under the table. He cut his steak with the mechanical precision of a man enduring something rather than enjoying it. He wasn't in love. He was performing. Just like everyone else at this table, except he hadn't figured out his exit yet. Dessert menus circulated. The waiter refilled glasses. And then, Brooke made the move I'd been waiting for. She pushed her chair back and stood holding her wine glass like a scepter. Everyone, before dessert, I just want to say how grateful I am. She pressed her free hand to her chest. 6 months ago, I moved to Charlotte with nothing. And now I have a career at an amazing company, a beautiful man, and a baby on the way. This city gave me everything. She turned and looked directly at me. And tonight is on me. My company just gave me a raise and I want to celebrate the right way. She reached into her clutch and pulled out the card. I recognized it immediately, the matte gray corporate visa tied to Ridgeline Analytics' primary operating account. My account. She held it up like a trophy, waving it slightly so the overhead light caught the embossed lettering. Dinner's on Brooke Calloway tonight, she announced. Gerald looked like he might cry. That's my girl, he said, his voice thick with pride. He glanced at me, a quick, deliberate look. See, Camille. That's what initiative looks like. He'd said it twice now, the same phrase, like a hammer driving the same nail. Denise beamed. Brooke handles 6-figure accounts at her company. She's going places. Then, without looking at me, meanwhile, she let the silence finish the sentence. Madison covered her mouth, stifling a laugh. You know that feeling when you're watching someone walk straight into a trap they built themselves. Stay right here. Under the table, I opened my phone. One message from Marcus sent 4 minutes ago. Standing by. Say the word. I typed nothing. Not yet. The waiter appeared at the edge of the table holding the leather check presenter. He leaned toward Brooke with the practiced discretion of a man who'd delivered 10,000 bills. The total for the table this evening is $4,847, he said quietly. Brooke didn't blink. She handed him the corporate card with a confident flick of her wrist, the gesture of a woman who believed she owned the world. Run it, she said, and smiled at Derek. The waiter disappeared through the door. I watched Brooke's manicured fingers release the card. I watched the door swing shut behind the waiter. I picked up my phone under the table and typed one word to Marcus. Now. Then I set the phone face down, folded my hands in my lap, and waited. The table buzzed with conversation, with compliments, with the warm, oblivious energy of people who had no idea they were 11 seconds away from the worst night of their lives. The waiter came back 11 seconds later. His face had changed completely. He walked through the door with the leather check presenter held slightly away from his body, the way you'd carry something that had stung you. His professional smile was gone. In its place was the tight, careful expression of a man delivering news he'd rather not deliver. He approached Brooke and leaned down. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The card has been declined. Brooke laughed. A short, reflexive burst, the kind that means you're joking. That's impossible. Run it again. I ran it twice, ma'am. The system shows the account has been frozen. The word frozen landed on the white tablecloth like a dropped knife. Conversation died in sections, the nearest guests, first, then the middle, then the far end silence spreading outward like a crack through ice. Denise set down her wine glass. What did he just say? Gerald leaned forward. Brooke, what's going on? Brooke's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. She snatched the card from the waiter's hand and stared at it as if the plastic itself had betrayed her. She fumbled for her phone, pulling up the banking app, tapping the screen with increasingly frantic fingers. Taylor and Madison exchanged a look. Barbara's hand froze halfway to her water glass. Derek watched his fiancée's composure crumble from 6 inches away. His jaw tightened. I set my water glass down. The card was frozen because I froze it. My voice wasn't loud. I didn't stand up. I just spoke the way you'd read a number off a bank statement. Clear, flat, and final. 22 heads turned. Brooke stared at me, her phone still in her hand. How? Would you even? Because it's my card, Brooke. I held her gaze. It's my company. Ridgeline Analytics. I founded it 18 months ago. I own it. And you've been stealing from it for 4 months. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum, every sound in the room sucked out at once, replaced by the dull hum of the air conditioning and the faint clatter of the main dining room beyond the closed doors. Brooke's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. That's insane. The CEO is listed under my legal middle and maiden name. I structured it that way for privacy. I reached into my bag and pulled the blue binder onto the table. The thud of it against the linen sounded heavier than it should have. $47,312 in falsified vendor invoices to shell companies that don't exist. $12,400 in a single fraudulent payment last month. And $35,000 for selling my company's entire client database to a competitor. I opened the binder to the orange tab and slid it across the table toward Derek. Your competitor, actually. Pinnacle Solutions. I looked at him. She sold my proprietary data to your company for $35,000, Derek. That's the money she's been using to buy the designer bags and the BMW, and the lifestyle she told you was family money. Derek picked up the binder. His eyes moved across the PageWire transfer records, email timestamps, Brooke's misspelled Venmo alias. The color drained from his face in real time, starting at his forehead and sliding down like a curtain being pulled. Brooke, he said quietly. What is this? Derek, don't listen to her. She's lying. She's always been jealous of me. I flipped to the yellow tab. 2 images side by side. The sonogram from Brooke's Instagram, and the identical stock photo from a medical image website in Tampa uploaded 18 months ago. Metadata printout underneath, download date source URL, Brooke's device, ID. There is no baby Derek. The table went so still I could hear the tea candles flickering. Derek stared at the 2 photos. His hand came up slowly and covered his mouth. He didn't look at Brooke. He looked at the images for a long time, long enough for Brooke to reach for his arm, for her fingers to close around his sleeve, for him to pull away, as though her touch burned. You told me you were carrying my child. His voice was barely a whisper. Derek, please, I can explain. It was just, we're done. He stood. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor, a sharp, ugly sound that cut through the room. He placed his napkin on the table with a strange, careful precision. Then he walked out. Past Barbara, past the neighborhood couples, past my father. He didn't look back. The heavy dining room door swung shut behind him, and the sound echoed like a period at the end of a sentence. Madison whispered, "Oh my God." Taylor had both hands over her mouth. I turned to Denise. She was sitting perfectly still, her emerald earrings catching the candlelight, her face arranged in an expression of manufactured concern, already calculating, already preparing her defense. She thought this was about Brooke. She thought she was safe. And you, I said. I pulled the green tab, laid the printed emails flat on the table. Denise's messages to Craig Mercer highlighted in yellow. Miss you already. Gerald doesn't suspect a thing. The Costa Rica booking confirmation. 2 one-way tickets. November 1st. I placed them next to the blue tab, the forged Chase Sapphire application, $11,400 in charges under Gerald's name. And finally, the purple tab, the unsigned quitclaim deed drafted by Paul Kimball to add Denise's name to my father's house. You've been having an affair with a man named Craig Mercer for at least 3 months, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. You booked 2 one-way tickets to Costa Rica. You opened a credit card in my father's name without his knowledge and charged $11,400. And you hired a lawyer to put your name on the deed of my mother's house. Gerald's face went white. Not red, not flushed white like something vital had been disconnected behind his eyes. He looked at the documents on the table. He looked at Denise. His mouth moved, but for 3 full seconds nothing came out. What? The word cracked in half on his tongue. Denise's performance mask fractured. The smile was still there, frozen, involuntary, but her eyes had gone blank, like a screen glitching between 2 programs. Her mouth opened. No sound. I closed the binder. You spent 6 months calling me lazy, I said. You told your friends I was figuring things out. You offered me a $16 an hour receptionist job. You cleared my mother's belongings out to the curb. I looked at my father, then at Denise, then at Brooke, who was sobbing into her hands, mascara running in dark rivers down her cheeks. But here's the thing about people who sit quietly at laptops: sometimes they're building companies, and sometimes they're building a case. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. 22 people. No one breathed. A tea candle guttered and died in its glass holder, sending a thin ribbon of smoke curling toward the ceiling. I reached into my bag and pulled out my personal credit card. I placed it on the leather check presenter. I'll cover the dinner, I said to the waiter who was standing frozen by the door. Consider it a going-away party. Then the front door of the restaurant opened and 2 plainclothes detectives walked in. Detective Rowan didn't knock. He didn't need to. The private dining room door was already open, and so was every secret Brooke Calloway had been hiding for 4 months. He walked in with the calm authority of a man who'd done this 100 times, badge on his belt, navy windbreaker with Charlotte Mecklenburg Police printed across the back in white block letters. A second detective followed, younger, carrying a manila folder. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. Rowan surveyed the room, the scattered documents on the table, the mascara-streaked woman sobbing in the red dress, the ashen-faced patriarch gripping the tablecloth, the 20 guests frozen in various stages of shock. His eyes found mine briefly. I gave him a single nod. Brooke Calloway, he said. Brooke looked up from her hands. Her face was swollen. Her makeup destroyed, her careful beauty reduced to something raw and cornered. Who are you? Detective Rowan, Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Financial Crimes Division. You're under arrest for embezzlement, corporate fraud, and theft of trade secrets. Please stand up and place your hands behind your back. You called the cops. Brooke screamed at me, her voice cracking into a register that made Barbara flinch 3 seats away. You called the cops on your own family. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say to her. The second detective stepped forward. Brooke tried to pull away, an instinctive, graceless lunge toward Denise, but Rowan caught her arm firmly and turned her around. The handcuffs clicked shut around wrists, still wearing the Cartier watch she'd bought with money she stole from my company. You have the right to remain silent, Rowan began. His voice was steady, almost gentle, the practiced cadence of a man who understood that the words were a formality, but the moment was permanent. They walked her toward the door. Brooke twisted, looking back over her shoulder, not at Denise, not at Gerald, at me. Her eyes were wild, searching for mercy she'd never once offered me. Camille, please. Please don't do this. I picked up my water glass and took a sip. They led her through the main dining room. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it, the sudden hush of 50 conversations dying at once. The scrape of chairs as diners turned to watch a woman in a red dress being escorted out in handcuffs past the dessert cart. Charlotte's Saturday night elite witnessing the live demolition of a life built on theft and lies. The door swung shut. The silence in our room was physical, a weight pressing down on the white tablecloth, the untouched dessert menus, the half-empty wine glasses. Gerald hadn't moved. He was staring at the documents spread across the table, the emails, the booking confirmation, the quitclaim deed, with the expression of a man reading his own autopsy report. Denise broke first. "Gerald." Her voice was high-thin, stripped of the honey-smooth control she'd wielded all evening. "Gerald, listen to me. The emails with Craig, he's just a friend, an old colleague. The plane tickets were for a conference. I can explain everything." Gerald didn't look at her. He picked up the Costa Rica booking confirmation and held it close to his face as though the small print might rearrange itself into something less devastating. 2 names, 1 way. November 1st. "A conference," he repeated. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. "The credit card, I was going to tell you about it. I just needed to establish some credit in my own name, and the easiest way. $11,400. Gerald's voice was very quiet, very calm, the kind of calm that comes right before something breaks beyond repair. Neiman Marcus, SoulCycle, a $2,000 hotel weekend, on a card I didn't know existed, under my name." Denise reached for his arm. He pulled it away as though she'd pressed a lit match to his skin. "And the house?" he asked. He still wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the purple tab, the quitclaim deed, his signature line, blank Paul Kimball's letterhead at the top. "You were going to put your name on the house, Karen's house. It was for us, Gerald, for our future, for security. Get out of my house by tomorrow morning." The sentence landed like a guillotine blade, clean, final, irreversible. Denise recoiled as though she'd been slapped. "Gerald, you can't. We're married. We have 3 months." He turned and looked at her for the first time. His eyes were red but dry, past tears, past anger, arriving at something colder and more permanent. "We've been married 3 months, Denise. I'll have divorce papers by Monday." Denise looked around the table. Her eyes darted from face to face, searching for an ally, a sympathetic expression, a crack in the wall of judgment surrounding her. Barbara looked down at her napkin. Frank studied his wineglass. The neighborhood couple sat rigid, arms crossed or hands in laps, performing the careful stillness of people who wanted to be anywhere else. Nobody spoke for her. Nobody moved. Denise's mouth opened and closed twice the performance machine, trying to reboot, searching for the right line, the right tone, the right mask. But there was no mask left. Every face in the room had seen the emails. Every face had seen the plane tickets. She grabbed her clutch from the back of her chair, nearly knocking her wine glass off the table. Her hands were shaking so badly the clasp wouldn't close. She smoothed the front of her emerald dress with a gesture that was pure muscle memory, a reflex from a life that no longer existed, and walked out of the room without looking at anyone. Her heels clicked unevenly on the hardwood floor. One step firm, the next unsteady. The sound faded down the corridor and disappeared. Gerald sat alone at the head of his own table, the host of the party. The patriarch who'd reserved this room ordered the wine, invited 22 people to celebrate the beautiful life his new family was building. Now his stepdaughter was in a police car. His wife was gone. His friends were staring at the wreckage of his tablecloth. He looked at me. The length of the table stretched between us. White linen, cold steaks, scattered documents, an empty chair where Derek had been sitting 2 hours ago. 20 pairs of eyes shifted back and forth between father and daughter. "You own Ridgeline Analytics," he said. Not a question. Yes. How long? 18 months. Your mother. His voice broke on the second word. He pressed his fist against his mouth, steadied himself. Did she know? I told her 3 days before she died. She said, "Don't you dare let anyone tell you you're not enough." Gerald closed his eyes. A single tear ran down his cheek and landed on the white tablecloth, darkening a small circle in the fabric. I let them tell you that, he whispered. Every single day. I stood up, slipped my bag onto my shoulder. The blue binder was back inside, closed, latched, finished. Can you forgive me, Camille? He opened his eyes. Give me another chance. I looked at him, this man who'd carried my mother's boxes to the curb, who'd told his friends I was between opportunities, who'd handed me a brochure for a $16 an hour receptionist job, while I ran an $80 million company from a laptop with a lavender sticker on it. I paid for the dinner tonight, Dad. That's more than you deserve. I pushed my chair in. But forgiveness isn't something I can put on a credit card. You'll have to earn it. And not because I'm your CEO, but because I'm your daughter. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I walked out the door. I walked through the main dining room. 50 pairs of eyes followed me, the woman who had arrived invisible and was leaving unforgettable. The hostess held the door open for me without being asked. The October air hit my face, cool and sharp, carrying the faint smell of fallen leaves. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing. Then I pulled out my phone and called Aunt Patricia. Aunt Patricia picked up on the second ring. Well, she asked. I leaned against the brick wall of the restaurant and smiled. It's done, Auntie. It's all done. She was quiet for a moment. Then she let out a long breath, the kind that carries years of worry out with it. Your mama is dancing tonight, baby. I guarantee it. I laughed. It came out shaky, half cry, half relief, the sound of a woman who'd been holding her breath for 6 months, finally letting it go. A couple walking into the restaurant glanced at me, navy blazer heels, laughing alone against a brick wall on a Saturday night in October. They probably thought I was drunk. I didn't care. Come to Savannah next weekend, Patricia said. I'll make cobbler. We'll sit on the porch and not talk about a single thing that matters. I'll be there. 3 weeks passed. The October heat broke into November cool, and Charlotte settled into that quiet stretch between Halloween and Thanksgiving when the whole city seems to exhale. The leaves on the Bradford pears along my street turned rust and gold before dropping to the sidewalk in brittle piles that crunched under my sneakers on morning walks. The aftermath unfolded in stages, the way consequences always do, not in a single explosion, but in a long, steady series of doors closing. Brooke was arraigned on 3 counts: embezzlement, corporate fraud, and theft of trade secrets. Bail was set at $75,000. Denise posted it using the last functioning credit card she had her own max to, within $200 of its limit. Brooke was fitted with an ankle monitor and barred from using any computer or accessing any corporate network pending trial. The Cartier watch and the Gucci bags were seized as evidence of proceeds from fraud. The BMW was repossessed by the dealership 3 days later when the automatic payment bounced from the frozen account. Derek Hale didn't just leave the restaurant that night. He left Brooke's entire existence. He blocked her number, her Instagram, her email. Through the investigation, the police shared additional evidence with him as a cooperating witness, including proof that Brooke had been seeing 2 other men during their relationship, both contacted through dating apps, both receiving gifts purchased with Ridgeline's money. Derek's cooperation with the prosecution was, according to Detective Rowan, enthusiastic. Denise moved out of my father's house the morning after the dinner. Gerald changed the locks. This time he was the one who didn't give anyone a key. He filed for divorce on Monday exactly as he'd promised. The process was expedited by the fact that Denise didn't contest it. She had nothing to contest with. Craig Mercer, the Costa Rica boyfriend, stopped returning her calls the moment Brooke's arrest made the local news. The one-way tickets went unused. The quitclaim deed went unsigned. The Chase Sapphire balance went to collections under Gerald's name, a $11,400 reminder of what blind trust actually costs. Ridgeline Analytics reported its best quarter ever. Revenue up 34% after Marcus and I plugged the data leak and rebuilt the client relationships Brooke had compromised. I promoted Marcus to co-CEO. He'd earned it 3 times over. On the morning the Q4 numbers posted, he sent me a photo of 2 lattes on a cafe table, one with a lavender flower drawn in the foam. No caption. He didn't need one. I met him that afternoon at our usual spot, a coffee shop on East Boulevard, the same one where I'd sat with Aunt Patricia the morning I decided to fight back. Marcus slid the latte across the table. I looked at the little lavender swirl dissolving slowly into the cream. "You know," he said, leaning back in his chair, "most CEOs would have fired her on day one. Most CEOs aren't trying to protect a father who doesn't deserve it. But you did it anyway." He paused. "That's why I work for you." We sat there for a while, not talking, just drinking coffee in the November sunlight that came through the window in long, golden bars. It felt normal. It felt earned. The following Saturday, I drove to my father's house. I hadn't been back since the dinner. The Lexus was gone from the driveway. Gerald had sold it the week before. My Honda Civic looked right at home in the empty space. He opened the door. He looked 10 years older than the man who'd sat at the head of that table 3 weeks ago, unshaven, wearing a wrinkled flannel shirt I recognized from before the polo shirts and the charcoal sport coats. He didn't try to hug me. He didn't try to explain. He just stepped aside. I walked past him straight through the kitchen. The new charcoal placemats were gone. The vanilla candles were gone and into the garage. The boxes were there. He hadn't thrown them away. He'd stacked them neatly against the far wall next to the lawnmower and a bag of mulch. I opened the top box. My mother's quilt folded carefully, smelling faintly of cedar and something floral that might have been her perfume or might have been my imagination. Her recipe cards in the cursive that leaned to the right, and the copy of East of Eden dog-eared at page 214, a faded coffee ring on the cover. I picked up the box and carried it to my car. When I walked back through the kitchen, Gerald was standing at the window looking out at the front yard. "I put her rose bushes back in yesterday," he said without turning around. "The ones Denise dug up. I found them behind the shed. The roots were still alive." I looked past him through the glass. 3 rose bushes, bare branches. No blooms, just brown woody stems stuck in fresh-turned earth along the walkway. They looked dead. But my mother had taught me that rose bushes are liars. They look finished long before they are. I didn't say I forgive you. I didn't say I don't. I just nodded. One small dip of my chin. Then I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove home. Back in my apartment, I set the box on my desk. I lifted out the quilt and draped it over my chair. I placed the recipe cards in the kitchen drawer next to my own measuring spoons. I put East of Eden on my nightstand. I'd finish it for her someday. Then I opened my mother's laptop. The lavender sticker was curling at the edges now, 6 years of heat and cold, and fingerprints slowly pulling it away from the aluminum. I pressed it back down gently with my thumb. The Ridgeline dashboard glowed on the screen. 47 employees, 12 active contracts, 1 CEO who built an empire on a kitchen table while her family called her lazy. I typed a message to the company-wide channel. "Q4 is our best quarter yet. Thank you for building this with me. Sent." Closed the laptop. Rested my hand on the lavender sticker and let my eyes close. My mother once told me the people who underestimate you are giving you the most powerful weapon there is: time. Time to plan. Time to build. Time to become someone they never saw coming. Gerald planted those rose bushes. Maybe that's where forgiveness starts, not with words, but with dirt under your fingernails and roots that refuse to die. Or maybe some bridges don't get rebuilt. They just stay broken, and you learn to swim. The people who laugh loudest at dinner are usually the ones who can't afford the bill. If this story reminded you that your silence is not weakness, that quiet people are often the most dangerous ones in the room, then share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Subscribe if you haven't already. And remember, the people who mock your laptop have no idea what you're building on it.